teacher, retired. I fully understand that when you add something or incorporate something into your curriculum, other things have to go away. There's only so much time, and you have so much time and space for things. Keep in mind that I'm a former science teacher, so some of the things that I will talk to you about over the course of the rest of the day are very science-oriented. I incorporated a lot of Native American information into my science class because Indigenous knowledge has proven over and over again to be valid. And, you know, Judy's mapping the landscape is a perfect example of that, and kids having the opportunity to collect data and do experimentation and all of that is really an important concept. So when I would teach my class, I would teach a section on ethnobotany. And ethnobotany, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is a scientific study of the traditional knowledge and customs of a people concerning the plants in their medical, religious, and other uses. Fancy explanation. Our relationship to plants. And we all have them, all of us. And I would have kids say to me, because I taught middle school, which in and of itself is a bit of a challenge. I would have kids say to me, but I don't have a culture. And I would go, really? So you don't hunt or fish, or you don't go out in the woods, you don't grow a garden, you don't maple sugar sometimes. Some of the families in my area did. I live in a very rural area. And they would be, well, of course we do, Mrs. Murphy. Well, guys, do you not think that's part of your culture? And, you know, kids kind of struggle with that because we're in nuclear families now. When I grew up, I had my grandmother living with us. And there was always stories and information going back and forth. And so, you know, I got all this information. And part of the difficulty is nobody says to you, this is the Irish way we do this, right? Nobody says that. Your parents didn't say, yeah, this is our English tradition here. No. Maybe you had Yorkshire pudding with your roast beef, right? I mean, I love Yorkshire pudding, but I was introduced to it by a guy that I dated who was English. Wasn't part of my tradition. But nobody says to you, this is a cultural piece. This is the way we do stuff. And I think that's important because kids don't feel connected. And so one of the things I wanted to do with ethnobotany when I taught it was to make those kids feel connected to who they were. And so, you know, you start out with, whoops. I would start out by giving them plates like this and ginger ale. And so this is not a Native American tradition. This is not a local plant, but it's very dramatic and it's great fun and the kids love it. So I would start out the conversation showing them this. So for many years, I would see this in a grocery store and go, yeah, I don't know what that is and I'm not messing with it. Because that's pretty funky looking, let's face it, you know, that's like, ew. So I start out with this, and I bring it out, and I'd say to the kids, does that look like food? And they all go, no. And I would cut it up. And I would give them a piece of the ginger. And I would say to them, well, does that smell like food? And to be perfectly honest, for those of you who use it, which I do a lot now, it doesn't. When you first cut it up, it doesn't really smell like food. It's just, you know, I mean, it's got a nice kind of smell, but kind of strong. If you lick it, oh. I'd hand out these little pieces and the kids would get, and you can imagine what that was like. And then I would show them a spice bottle. See what I mean? That's the same face I'd get from my kids. Show them the spice bottle. Well, the spice bottle is easier. These they see in their kitchens. So they're like, okay, maybe. Maybe. We're not convinced, but maybe. And then I give them a plate like this. Now, I had a science education professor years ago that said to me, if you give kids food, they'll pay attention to what you're talking about. It's true. You all know it's true. And so I would say to them, okay, so are you familiar with any of these things? And they're all like, oh yeah, you know, this is food. This is recognizable to middle schoolers as food. Ginger ale, yeah. They did, a lot of them didn't get soda at home. And so I would get permission from parents, you know, I'm gonna use a little soda, can they have it? They'd be like, okay. But all of this is recognizable as food. And so where that path takes them, of course, is to stop and think about, what is food? How do people figure it out? If you dug this silly thing out of the ground, would it occur to you that that was food? Wouldn't me. So, sometimes I would do it with the ginger. I like it because ginger's kind of fun. And the kids are familiar with ginger ale and gingerbread and maybe ginger candy, not so much, but some of them. A lot of them don't like the ginger candy, it's too strong. But the indigenous alternative. And some years I would use this. Some years I would say, when I was feeling particularly flush, I would point out, because of course, as you all know, you start buying ginger candy, I mean maple candy and things like that, and it gets very pricey. But depending on how big the class was, I'd have the maple syrup, maple tea, maple candy, but usually I would try and bring maple sugar and maple cream, and then sometimes a granola with maple, because, you know, this is all food. It's all clearly food. But again, I would say to them, the staff of the tree, who figured out that was food? Who figured that out? How would you figure that out? And to come back to, you know, Judy's conversation about mapping the landscape, experimentation, and trying different things out. We have stories about it, and the stories say that, you know, that the native people could get pure syrup out of the tree, and so they got lazy and they would lay underneath the trees and just take the syrup. And was it Gustavi or Gustavi came and got very upset and said, you know, you're gonna have to work for it. So somebody somewhere along the line figured out that if they cooked it they could get a sugar out of it. A Native American tradition that you don't see anymore is that when we made maple sugar, we put it into blocks. They were hard, big blocks. And that would travel with you conveniently, and it would last pretty much forever. I have a block that was gifted to me years ago, and this silly thing is still good. I've probably been using it for about 12 years now. The sugar doesn't go bad because A, there's no moisture in it, and B, there's too much sugar. The chemistry doesn't work, so it lasts. So ethnobotany, again, ways we use plants.